My name is Ken Opalo, and this lesson looks at how each of us can work to promote transparency and good governance where we live and work. In this lesson, I'll focus on the following learning objectives. First, how to think about the relationship between transparency and good governance where you are, because different legal and political environments require different strategies for engaging public officials to increase transparency in government. Second, how to engage in advocacy to promote both transparency and good governance. Smart advocacy requires development of strategies that will not only result in more transparency and integrity on the part of government, but also a greater level of citizen involvement in public affairs. The goal of transparency should be to generate easily accessible and actionable information for the public. And the more citizens know about the workings of their government, the more they can hold their leaders accountable for their actions on their behalf. As you've heard in other lessons in this course, transparency is a critical component of good governance. This is because of three key reasons. First, transparency allows citizens to be aware of what their government is doing and to hold their leaders accountable. When citizens are aware of the actions of their government, they are more likely to remain engaged and to participate in civil society. Second, transparency creates incentives for public officials to avoid behaviors that go against the public good, such as corruption or wasteful spending. If leaders know that their actions are subject to public scrutiny, they are less likely to engage in acts that may leave them exposed to negative public opinion or legal prosecution. Finally, by being informed of the actions of government officials, civic-minded citizens can engage in collective action. Transparency allows citizens to collectively arrive at a common understanding of the reasons behind the actions of public officials and to react accordingly. Secrecy breeds distrust, and transparency makes it harder for politicians to use tax dollars for illicit gain. Secrecy in public life is likely to breed corruption. It is for this reason that citizens across the globe have been advocating for transparency and good governance. Citizens have demanded to know how their respective governments spend their taxes and revenues from natural resources, how governments monitor their electronic communication, and how money impacts politics. Different situations demand different strategies. How you choose to engage with government officials, civil servants, or private companies and individuals can vary. Here are some general strategies that you can use for promoting transparency and good governance. Begin by familiarizing yourself with the laws governing transparency in your country, including freedom of information laws if they exist. Be sure to find out why the existing laws were passed or why your country has yet to pass freedom of information laws. Always assume that transparency is not universally desired and that it is inherently political. Be sure to identify the specific interests working against greater transparency in government. Once you've done that, the next step is to build domestic coalitions. Greater transparency will be opposed by those that stand to lose from public scrutiny of government actions. But a well-organized grassroots effort that has the support of a broad and diverse group of citizens can counteract those who would look to operate outside the public's view. Use local institutions. Legislatures and the judiciary can be important tools for achieving transparency, and legal proceedings in court can provide vital information on government actions. Part of your strategy should include using these institutions to expose and convey information that specific government officials may be hiding. Engage those who are opposed to transparency. Transparency will create losers. These may include government officials and contractors or private companies. Be sure to engage these actors. Know why they oppose the changes you're advocating for. Be open to compromises for the sake of incremental progress that takes into account their interests and concerns. Keep communicating and stay engaged. Individuals and companies know that there can be severe consequences for those that aren't willing to adhere to the law. Build global alliances. There are multiple international organizations that work to advance greater transparency in government. These include Transparency International, Publish What You Pay, Oxfam, and others. Work with the local chapters of these organizations who often collect data on various forms of corruption, including bribery, embezzlement, extortion, or illicit enrichment. Know the global legal environment. Over the last few years, a number of countries have passed freedom of information and anti-corruption laws. Many of these laws apply to government officials and multinational corporations that may be operating in your countries. Seek to know how you can leverage laws in foreign jurisdictions to affect transparency in your home country. You can do this in conjunction with your global partners mentioned earlier. Do not just provide information, provide actionable information. Remember that it is not enough to inform citizens about specific actions of the government or specific officials. This information must be packaged in a way that makes sense to ordinary citizens. The goal of transparency should be to generate citizen engagement in order to hold public officials accountable. As such, in your efforts to encourage greater transparency and good governance, always seek to provide the public with information that they can relate to, and which they can use to engage in specific forms of action, like calling or visiting their representative, attending public meetings, or holding a peaceful demonstration. Technology can allow you to disseminate information to large groups of people simultaneously. Use websites like a Pay to Bribe and social media to report on instances of corruption or self-dealing. Insist that your governments and media publish official government documents in a timely manner via accessible channels. Use technology, but do not overestimate its impact. Remember that technology is not a substitute for people power. Real progress is only achievable if people are willing to organize and engage peacefully and respectfully with public officials. Most importantly, do not engage in activity that contributes to a lack of transparency and good governance yourself. If you're part of a professional organization or association, make sure that you follow a code of conduct. If you don't have an established written code of conduct, work with the organization or association to create one. Consult your local or regional chamber of commerce for information and assistance. Finally, support those integrity heroes who, like yourself, are working for more transparency and good governance. Organizations like Global Changemakers, Transparency International, and Whistleblowers International highlight the good work of those working to end practices that lead to corruption. Familiarize yourself with those who are leading the way and find ways to support them. Always remember that the goal of transparency is to ensure good governance, to keep public officials accountable, and to elicit robust citizen participation in public affairs. Transparency and good governance should always be about informing and making the best decisions on behalf of citizens. After you have completed all the lessons in this course at yali.state.gov, you can test your knowledge and earn a yearly network certificate.